That's probably the neatest story, and I'll try to refrain from getting emotional, but you know, my wife and I had tried for years prior to Joe to have our own children. And for reasons, God's reasons, which I finally came to realize later, you know, going through that process of 8 years trying to have your own child, and it not happening, and going home and watching what it was doing to my wife and the struggle that she was going through. I think every woman desires at some point in time that they want to be a mom. And I certainly wanted to be a dad. And we really had a hard time adjusting to why it wasn't happening. And long story short, we finally got a phone call one day. I remember telling Jane before that phone call, though, I realized that my mother had raised me to believe and understand that God has a reason for everything. And I shared that with Jane, and I told her, and I also shared with her that as long as someday God reveals what his plan was and what his reasons were for this, I was content with it. We had to trust God. And it wasn't much longer after that that we received a phone call from my sister-in-law saying that she's a pediatric nurse out in Las Vegas, that a lady had been coming in and was going to give up her child for adoption for one reason only, to provide a better life than what she thought she could for this baby. And would we be interested? And we did. We filed for adoption with this child, and Joe came into our lives in that manner. And I'll never forget the day that we left the hospital and all the shuffle and confusion of everything, you know, because Jane and I never knew if we were ever going to know what it sounded like to be called mom or dad. And we walked out of that hospital in Las Vegas with Joe, and I was putting him in the car, my brother-in-law's car, in the car seat, and it hit me, and I turned around and I told Jane, I said, "Oh my God." She goes, "What?" And I said, "Do you remember about a year to this date, I told you God has a reason. Mom raised me to believe that, and I told you as long as we knew what that reason was someday." I said, "There he is." And sorry.
It's awesome.
That one's always hard,
It's awesome.
but it's a great story.
Yeah.
So, to answer your question, that's how Joe came into our lives.
First baseball memory. Probably just when I was a little kid coming up here all the time, just hanging out with the guys, hitting with them, hitting BP. I mean, not really even hitting BP, just kind of hitting in the cages when I was small, but just being out on the field every day. And even like just on the campus, like going to the CAF all the time with the players growing up, just seeing like the people around, everything. Like I still recognize professors that I saw when I was little. And I was actually in a tournament at the same time as they were in the World Series in 2005, so I couldn't make it that time. But the one memory I do have is I really liked Colby Overstreet from that year. That was one of my favorite players. And I just remember he had a bad day, and then my dad called me and he told him, or he was talking about how Colby had a bad day, and I was like, tell him to hit a couple bombs for me the next day. And then that was a championship, and he hit, I think, 1 or 2 bombs that game, and that was really cool.
Joe actually signed himself to OCU when he was 4 years old. We were inside the tunnels hitting in the cage one day, and the conversation turned to what he wanted to do when he got big. And he told me, "Dad, I'm going to play for you someday." And I remember my immediate response was, "Well, kiddo, if that's the case, you better get to work, because you're going to have to be really good to play for me, and I'm not going to listen to your mother yelling at me while you're sitting on my bench if you're not good enough to play, so you got to go to work." Well, the years went by, and in high school he started getting some letters to go on recruiting visits for other schools, and he never returned one of them. Even Oklahoma State had offered him the opportunity to come up and visit the school. And I told Joe, those envelopes laid on the kitchen counter for months. And I said, "Joe, you haven't sent any of these back." I said, "You didn't even send the one back from Oklahoma State." I said, "Dude, you need to go on a visit. Go see some of these schools." And he goes, "Dad, I told you a long time ago I was going to play for you. I don't want to go anywhere else." So the answer to that question is Joe really signed himself to us when he was 4 years old.
It was weird. It was like, dang, I'm really about to do it. Like, I'm about to play with my dad, about to play for him, you know. then go to school here where I grew up. It's great.
The nervousness that I had Joe's first game here as a freshman. He not only started as a freshman his first game, our first game of the season, but he ended up leading off for us that game because we had a situation where our normal leadoff hitter was hurt and couldn't play, and so Joe moved from where he was supposed to be in a two-hole to our leadoff. So I'm sitting there 5 hours before the game realizing that my son is going to be leading off our season. And I've never been so nervous in a baseball environment in my life. I've coached AAA playoff games. I've coached national championship games. And I'm usually not that nervous, but I was extremely nervous. And Denny asked me, "What's the matter with you?" And I told him, I said, "Denny, Joe's leading off our season." He goes, "Oh, for God's sakes, get over it and let's go to work." And Joe lined out his first at bat. I still remember it, and I was still nervous second at bat, and he got his first base hit as a college player, and it all settled after that.
That first game, that was crazy. I expected to be hitting two-hole, came out, looked at the lineup, I was leading it off. I was like, well, my first college game, I'm leading it off. See one pitch, strike. I was like, oh God, this is crazy. Next pitch, I just hit a laser right at the second baseman. One hopper, like, got him. But, that was my first at bat. That was pretty cool. Like, I hit it and I was like, okay, it's baseball. I'll be all right.
Obviously, as much as you like to try to play both roles, I've got to understand that when Joe first came to school here, it was an adjustment for me because by choice, while Joe was growing up, I never coached his teams. I tried to stay on the sidelines and be a parent. I would occasionally go help with their practices if they wanted me to do something, hit fungos or talk to the boys about hitting, but I really tried to take a back seat to Joe's teams while he was growing up. And then all of a sudden when he was here at OCU, I realized, man, I've got to figure out how to balance being dad and coach. But as far as the satisfaction that I derive, it's no different than any other parent. I'd like to say it is, but it's not. I mean, and it was difficult on me, especially Joe's first year, because I was learning the process of that. One of our guys would go up and get a big base hit or double in the gap to drive in 2 runs, and he'd slide into second base, and I'd just get so excited and look at him and go, "That a baby!" But then Joe would do it, this very same type of thing, and I would have to kind of control my emotions. I felt compelled to, even though it probably wasn't fair, to Joe, but I would look at him and go, "That a baby," but inside I was going, "That's my boy," But then finally I felt guilty about it, and I went up to Joe one day and I told him, I said, I always praise the other guys when they do well, and after the game's over, I bring up the spotlights and how such and such did this and such, and I never do that with you, and I hope you understand why. And he goes, "Dad, I don't want you to do that." He goes, "It's hard enough being your son as it is," and so there was a mutual understanding between Joe and I, but I tremendously, I celebrate it in my own way. It's with pride inside, and there are times where I have made a point to speak of Joe in front of the whole team and what he's accomplished and the good things he did, but it's a lot less than the other guys, I know that.
I hit it, and I didn't hit it too well, so I was like, I gotta work for this double. So I was sprinting, and then I got there, and I was like, oh, dang, I did it. That's awesome. I broke the record. That's cool, because that record is stood from Kirk Walker in what year was he here? Like
2011.
2011, and then Baker broke it last year, and then I just broke it this year. So I feel like that's probably going to stand for a while because we still have 10 more games and I'm going to hit more probably. So it's just really cool to think that I could be in the record books here for a very long time.
It was kind of bittersweet, to be honest with you, for a couple reasons. I mean, obviously as a father, I can remember telling Joe when he was little, and I've told all my players, I love doubles. It's my favorite hit in the game. And Joe's known that, so I think he's absorbed himself to a little bit of the pride that I have in that. I love doubles. It's my favorite hit, and watching him break that as a father last night was extremely a prideful moment for me. But yesterday morning I found out that my mother had fallen and she had broken her leg and her femur in her leg, and dealing with that all day and being 1,000 miles away from my mom, I told Joe before the game, I said, you need to go hit Grammy her double and break that record today. And he did, so it kind of eased the thought process and a little bit of that struggle of wondering how my mom was doing. She had surgery this morning. For everybody out there, she's doing really good. I just got off the phone with her a little while ago, but I love that he responded to that. Go get Grammy her double today, and it's also his mama's double. Mama gets the ball. Jane loves yelling out there in the games, hit me a double, babe, and the fact that she couldn't be at the game yesterday really bothered her, but we had one of the parents videotape the at-bat, so she has that. And first thing she asked me last night when I got home was, where's my ball? Because that ball's going to Mama. The other thing that was really bittersweet for me, too, is on the bus home last night, I was finally able to contemplate everything, and somebody that's like a second son to me is Jared Baker. And I felt compelled to reach out to him and send him a message, because as a dad, I was extremely proud that my son had just become the all-time career doubles champion, but at the same time, it was disheartening because Jared Baker is like a second son to me. And in a perfect world, without taking anything away from Joe's accomplishment, in a perfect world, I kind of wish they would have finished tied. And that's not to take anything away from Joe. I'm so certainly thankful. And I sent Baker that message saying that, and he responded back just like I thought he would. He told me, Keith, I text Joe as soon as he hit the double. I was watching it. And he goes, dude, I'm so proud of him. Well, that's Jared Baker. That's why it was a tough situation for me to handle, because he loves me, I love him, and I know as teammates they loved each other. And Jared's extremely proud of Joe, as am I, and a whole lot of other people. It's really neat putting 30 years in as a coach here and knowing that my son's name's going in that record book. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I have a couple. Probably one of them would definitely be going to the AAA stadium with him all the time, because that's just something you don't, like, a lot of people don't get to do. Like, just being in that certain environment, that's just like once in a lifetime opportunity, and to be able to spend that with my dad was just really cool. And then probably my most favorite was probably last year in the World Series, just sharing the same field with him. Like, we both worked so hard to get back there, and it was just, that was an awesome moment for the both of us.
And then getting back to the World Series, the Lewis and Clark game last year where Joe went 4 for 5, probably on the biggest stage that he's ever played in, and he stepped up and did a great job. That was also another one. Now the hardest one that I'm looking forward to is whenever it comes to be our last game here. That has severely weighed on my mind all year, because I've had to say so long to a lot of players that I have invested relationships with, in terms of they're my sons too, and that senior year rolls around, and all that comes to a head. That last out's made, and I don't care even if you won the national championship like we did in 2005. I was emotionally a train wreck after that game because of the seniors that I had to say so long to. So I don't know how that's going to act out with Joe. But I certainly am thankful for the 4 years that him and I have shared together in the same uniform.